On a warm summer night in Tallahassee, Florida, a 12-year-old girl walked out of her home and vanished. Her name was Lori Paige Wiley. For nearly 2 years, her fate remained a mystery. No one knew where she had gone or why. But the truth was closer to home than anyone could have ever imagined. This is the story of a young girl lost and the father who reported her missing. A case full of secrets, haunting silence, and one heartbreaking answer. Welcome to the Friday Night Campfire Stories. My name is Rob. I will be your host for this evening. This is my series, Far From Fiction, the series where we dig into the darkest corners of true crime and expose the stories that keep us up at night. If you're into deep dives, shocking twists, and real-life mysteries that unfold like thrillers, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications and settle in, because this case will leave you speechless. Lori Paige Wiley was just 12 years old when she disappeared. A 7th grader at Griffin Middle School in Tallahassee. Lori was known for her bright eyes, love of music, and curiosity about the world around her. She had a vibrant imagination, and like many girls at her age, she was still discovering who she wanted to be. But Lori's young life hadn't been without struggles. She lived with her father, Andrew Wiley, a man who worked long shifts at a local correction facility. Lori's mother wasn't in the picture, and her support system outside of home was limited. Those close to her described her as resilient but restless. She had a history of running away, something that complicated what would become a heartbreaking investigation. But each time she had run before, Lori always came back, most of the time just going to stay with friends. Lori loved school and made sure that even if she had run away, she was able to attend school the next day. But this time, she didn't. On June 3rd, 2023, Andrew Wiley came home from his night shift and reported Lori missing. He told police that she had left sometime while he was gone, slipping out into the night without a word. It wasn't the first time. Authorities treated it as another runaway case. But time passed, hours turned to days, and Lori, who usually came back, who usually called, was silent. There was no sighting, no messages, and no trace. The Tallahassee Police Department launched an investigation, and even the FBI stepped in. Volunteers searched woods, parks, empty lots. Flyers were put up across the city, but nothing turned up. It was as if Lori had vanished into thin air. At first, suspicion stayed low, but behind closed doors, something didn't sit right. Over time, the story would start to change. Details would unravel, and the person who seemed most concerned might not have been telling the truth at all. When Lori was first reported missing, the city of Tallahassee responded quickly. The Tallahassee Police Department launched a missing child's investigation, within hours of Andrew Wiley's 911 call. On paper, it looked like a runaway case, but there was a growing sense, subtle at first, that something wasn't right. Andrew Wiley told investigators that Lori had left home overnight while he was at work. He claimed to have came home from his overnight shift at the Leon County Detention Facility to find her gone. There was no sign of forced entry, no note, no message. Andrew said Lori had a history of running away, that she had done it before. This was just her acting out. He even suggested that she was upset over minor household arguments. According to him, Lori just needed time to cool off. But detectives noticed something odd. Andrew didn't seem panicked. He wasn't begging for media coverage. He wasn't organizing search parties. Instead, he quietly cooperated, but from a distance. Police worked tirelessly to locate Lori. They followed leads across the city. Search teams combed wooded areas over Continental Court, local parks, and even dumpsters. Surveillance footage from nearby homes were collected. Witnesses were interviewed, but Lori had seemingly vanished without a trace. The FBI joined the case weeks later, elevating it to a federal missing child's investigation. They profiled Lori's digital activity, tracked her social media use, and searched for online predators, but again, nothing. With no signs of Lori, no communication from her, theories started to circulate, some rooted in reasons, others in desperation. Had she met someone online and run away for good? Was she lured by a stranger posing as a friend? Could she have been abducted when walking alone at night? Or even was she the victim of human trafficking? Each theory was investigated, but each theory was dismissed. At Griffin Middle School, the staff and students were devastated. Teaching assistant Margaret Summers told local reporters Lori was strong, but she was still a child. We knew her. She wouldn't just disappear. Those closest to Lori began questioning the idea that she had run away willingly. She hadn't taken money, she hadn't packed clothes, and she had left her favorite stuffed animal on her bed, the same one that she brought to every sleepover since she was 6 years old. Behind the scenes, detectives were starting to pick up on red flags. For one, Andrew's timeline didn't entirely hold up. His work hours were verified, but his phone records showed something strange. He wasn't as far from home as he claimed. A few pings placed him well outside his usual route. Still, without a body, without a crime scene, and without witnesses, there wasn't enough to pursue him as a suspect. While Lori's face was printed on flyers and shared across social media, the one man who claimed to love her the most was already hiding something. But it would take almost 2 years before the truth would claw its way into the light. By late 2023, Lori had been missing for months. The Amber Alerts had gone silent, the media coverage faded, and the tips had dried up. But behind the scenes, investigators weren't letting go. They were re-examining old statements, looking harder at what wasn't said. And quietly, the tone of the investigation began to shift from a young girl who had run away to a girl who may have never left her home alive. The FBI began revisiting digital evidence. Andrew Wiley's cell phone data, which once appeared routine, was now under a microscope. Pings from the night of June 2nd and early June 3rd placed him in a location he never mentioned in interviews. His story was that he was working a night shift and came home to find Lori missing. The data, it placed him within walking distance of a wooded area near Appalachia Parkway. Andrew Wiley had been meticulous in his interviews, deliberate, cooperative, even emotional at times. But as detectives cross-referenced his alibis, holes started to appear. Security footage from nearby convenience stores showed Andrew stopping for gas that night, something he never mentioned. Even more disturbing, the timestamp showed that he wasn't in uniform. He wasn't on his way to work. He was already off duty. Why would he lie about that? Investigators returned to Wiley's residence with a fresh warrant. This time, they brought the forensic team. Behind Lori's bedroom wall, they found trace amounts of blood. Small, faint, but human. It wasn't enough to confirm that a crime had already occurred, but it was enough to raise an alarm. The room had been cleaned thoroughly. Too thoroughly for just a simple runaway case. At this point, law enforcement quietly reclassified the case. No longer a missing juvenile, now it was being handled as a suspected homicide. But without a body, there could be no arrest. So they waited. They watched Andrew Wiley. They pulled up every digital footprint, combed through every message, and kept building their case piece by piece. Because somewhere in the silence, they believed was a confession waiting to surface. And then, on March 17, 2024, the case changed forever. By early 2024, Andrew Wiley's carefully crafted story had begun to crumble. His timeline didn't hold, his phone data told a different story, and now, it was his internet history that would blow this case wide open. When investigators were granted a deeper warrant into Andrew's devices, they uncovered something chilling. In the weeks leading up to Lori's disappearance, and for several days after, Andrew had been searching remote areas in both Georgia and Alabama. His search terms included remote areas with water in Georgia, wooded lands with no homes, and how long for remains to decompose in the woods. Even more specific, Thomas County hunting land. These weren't frantic clicks of a grieving parent. These were calculated searches. He wasn't looking for Lori. He was looking for a place to hide her. With these digital footprints in hand, law enforcement partnered with local authorities in Georgia. Thomas County became a focal point. The terrain was dense, overgrown brush, private fields, hunting lands. In fact, many of the areas Andrew had looked up had already been searched, but thick undergrowth made a thorough sweep nearly impossible. Then, in early April 2025, nature gave investigators the break they'd been waiting for. A controlled burn was performed on private land in Thomas County, land eerily close to one of the sites Andrew had mapped. As the brush cleared and the smoke faded, a local property owner stumbled upon something buried underneath the ashes. Beneath a cluster of brush and pine straw were the skeletal remains of a child. Investigators moved in quickly. Forensic team were able to confirm, through dental records and clothing fragments, what everyone had feared. It was Lori.
Breaking update to a story I've been following about missing 12-year-old Lori Paige. I'm Mayor Sargent in the Midtown neighborhood. The Tallahassee Police Department says Paige's remains have been found and her father has been arrested in relation to her death. It's been a 22-month-long search by communities and agencies across Florida and Georgia to find 12-year-old Lori Paige. Friday, the Tallahassee Police Department announced that her father, Andrew Wiley, has been arrested in relation to her death.
That was news that we needed. However, it wasn't the welcome news that we wanted. It wasn't one of hope, but certainly a one of closure. And certainly that puts us on the path of what do we do now?
TPD shared this timeline of the search that led to Paige's remains being found. June 3rd, 2023, Paige's father, Andrew Wiley, reported her missing, telling police she'd packed a backpack and left overnight while he was at work. After some inconsistencies with his story, police eventually shifted their focus to Wiley. In February 2024, a phone was taken from his home that they say included questionable internet searches about remote bodies of water in Georgia and Alabama. Not long afterwards, police say they also had digital evidence that led them to a remote area of Thomas County, where they searched for Lori, but nothing was found. Until April 5th, when investigators returned to that area after a prescribed burn that cleared away the brush. A search of the area turned up Paige's remains. I spoke with Pastor Rudy Ferguson Friday, who led some of the efforts to find Paige.
It's our loss. Her life being taken was a part of us as well.
Ferguson says Friday's news will be felt deeply in this community.
Every little girl could be a little Lori. You know, every little boy could be in the same situation as little Lori. So it's important to understand that.
He's urging neighbors to safeguard our children.
We must start protecting our children. We must pay attention to the signs that they're in trauma situations. We must begin to just be our neighbors, love one another, make sure that, the children next door are safe and secure.
She had been there the whole time, just beyond the search team's reach, hidden in a place her own father quietly researched, selected, and returned home from there. Lori's remains were consistent with long-term environmental exposure, but there was more. Tiny fibers matched the blanket from the Wiley home. Soil samples on Andrew's tires matched the terrain from the site, and GPS data from his phone, previously overlooked, placed him less than 2 miles away from the spot on the night that Lori had vanished. The case was no longer a question of if, but of when they make their move. Lori had finally been found, but closure would only come with justice and accountability. And it was time for Andrew Wiley to answer for what he had done. Just last week on April 11th, nearly 2 years after Lori Paige Wiley disappeared from her home in Tallahassee, her father, Andrew Wiley, was arrested and charged with her murder. The man who once stood in front of cameras pleading for his daughter's return was now in handcuffs, being led away. Andrew Wiley was charged with second-degree murder. Investigators say he carefully constructed lies, digital searches, and ultimately the recovery of Lori's body left no room for doubt. According to Leon County Sheriff's Office, Andrew acted alone. No one else had been named a suspect. The Tallahassee community, stunned by the betrayal, but united in grief, gathered in honor of Lori. Her former classmates, teachers, neighbors, and strangers who all followed the case for months had come together for a vigil at a local park. Lori Paige Wiley was more than a headline. She was an artist, a dreamer who loved drawing. Her teachers described her as creative and quiet, with a smile that made you feel seen. A little girl who struggled from a rough life at home and poured all of her energy into school. Even in the darkest chapters of this story, Lori's light never stopped shining. Her legacy lives on through the voices that fought for her, and the ones who never gave up looking. As of now, Andrew Wiley is being held without bond as he awaits trial. No plea has been entered, and the court date has not been yet announced. Though an arrest has been made, justice has not been yet completely served. The coming months will reveal more about what happened the night that Lori disappeared, and what consequences await the man who took her life. This story is not just about crime, but the courage of those who spoke up, and asked questions, and demanded answers. It is about a child's voice who was stolen, but whose story will now echo louder than ever before. We will continue to follow Lori's case as we head into a trial, and we will continue to say her name. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the heartbreaking case of Lori Paige Wiley. If you found this video informative or compelling, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post 3 full-length videos every single week covering true crime, paranormal history, and my own original terrifying stories that you won't find anywhere else. If you're a fan of dark storytelling, be sure to check out my newest book, A Perfect Journey Through Villainous Eyes, now available on Amazon. It's a twisted exploration of mortality, madness, and the blurred lines between right and wrong, and I think that you'll enjoy it. As always, thank you for spending a little bit of your evening here with me.